This is the story of by far the most evil D&D character I've ever played, and how, after his death, he got a hero's funeral. I tell this story whenever a new player wants to play this villainous PC, because there's always a risk of an evil character becoming hated amongst players in the group because they are detrimental to the party's success. So my recommendation for playing an evil character that doesn't disrupt the party is to have them do evil things for good reasons. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Because the thing with evil characters is that they never believe that they're the villain. I believe that it's so important when you're playing an evil character to give the character a good reason to conduct their actions, at least a good reason for them. I recommend that it's something more than just personal gain. Personal gain, while a reason to do evil, falls flat when you're looking at world-shattering consequences. It's one thing if you just want to rob a bank, it's a completely different thing if your actions lead to the rise of the god of undeath. For evil characters, I recommend taking a value like honor, justice, truthfulness, and ramping it up to 11. Have the character act way too extremely while still trying to pursue this generally noble value. Roland Cade, by far the most evil character I've ever played, and this is his story. Content warning ahead because he did some pretty terrible things as I was playing him, all in the name of protecting the people he loved. The game took place in a homebrewed version of the Forgotten Realms. Roland was born in the city of Neverwinter, but this Neverwinter was militaristic. The city's ruling elite propagated foreign wars and imperialist action. It was this constant, never-ending cycle of bloodshed, and Roland, being this small, menial office worker, didn't know what to do. Everything began to change though when he discovered a secret god amongst records that he was supposed to be burning. This broke the facade of the regime, and Roland decided it was time to end the control of the ruling elite. Another war was about to be started, and a final vote amongst the elite was happening a few days from then. So Roland got to work. He was a smart guy and began constructing a bomb made of white phosphorus. Now, if you've played the game Spec Ops: The Line, then you know what the effects of white phosphorus look like. It is a brutal, terrible substance that is one of the worst ways to die. But Roland was a brutal man. Although he wanted to do good, there was always this underlying darkness in him. So, in the dead of night, Roland crept through the tunnels of the sewer system, following an old map that he had gotten from his records. He then snuck beneath the sewer system right below the place where the elite were going to be meeting and placed the bomb. He then ran back to his hideout and waited until eventually a massive explosion could be heard resounding from the city of Neverwinter. Roland was elated as he'd stopped the war. At least, he thought. Roland had actually made a mistake and had bombed an orphanage, not the place where the elite were meeting. His maps were wrong. Neverwinter quickly used this as propaganda to push people into signing up for the new war. Eventually, though, they discovered that Roland had perpetrated this attack and he was scheduled to be executed. As the hangman was leading Roland to the gallows, his forgotten goddess stepped in and saved him at the last moment. He was slingshot through space until he ended up a few miles outside of Neverwinter. His goal was to redeem himself for his failure and, one day, take down Neverwinter. This was a prelude to the Lost Mines of Phandelver adventure that the group was running. After joining a fairly large party of 6, Roland tried to fit in the best he could. He seemed like a good dude, if a bit weird. Roland by nature was a College of Eloquence bard, so he spent most of his days encouraging the party, buffing them, healing them when he could, and generally just trying to be a good person. And the party appreciated him. Everyone else was a fighter, barbarian, ranger, or paladin. He was the only true caster in the group, as well as the one who really focused on healing. But despite being with this new people, the old Roland was still inside. Roland had dreams of starting over and creating a thriving utopia to spite Neverwinter. He wanted to create the society that he foresaw. And that's when the cracks started to form in Roland's character, slowly over time. Roland became mayor of Phandalin after exposing the current one for various different crimes, then having them be assassinated by the party's assassin Rogue, and consolidating power. And the thing was that Roland was asking other party members to do what in their hearts they really wanted to do. He was the devil on everyone's shoulder. Whenever the party wanted to do something morally dubious that would generally help their situation, Roland was always there pushing them, encouraging them to just take that leap. They were doing the right thing, but Roland just kept getting worse and worse as being the face of the party started to go to his head. He killed a friendly NPC, Sildar Hailwinter, because he wanted Iarno Albrecht to be his court wizard, but Sildar refused. Iarno was a criminal and a traitor, and Sildar wanted him to be brought to justice. Roland brought Sildar out to the woods and tried to convince him, and that's the moment when Sildar realized Roland was the man who had firebombed Neverwinter. Once Roland's true nature was revealed, the two fought, and Roland beat Sildar to death in the woods. It should also be noted that I power gamed the fuck out of Roland. While he mostly healed through some multi-classing and feat acquisition, Roland's AC was routinely above 25 after level 5, and he was able to deal 25 to 40 melee damage a round. Plus, he gained access to Fireball via a magic item, so while the rest of the party didn't realize it, he was quickly becoming far more powerful than all of them. Me and my DM at the time ran a simulation of Roland versus every other party member, a 1v6 scenario. We ran the simulation 2 or 3 times and Roland curb stomped the entire party time after time. I want to also mention that Roland's rise to power and descent into evil was not fast. He was very much a slow burn character. 95% of the time in a session, he was the party's ally, the goodest of good guys. He buffed and healed everybody he could, and generally helped every other party member because he wasn't just doing evil for his own gain. He cared about Phandalin. He cared about everyone else in his party. But he was building power, staying in the background and waiting to strike. By the time people had realized how powerful he'd become, it was too late. Eventually, the party defeated the villain of Lost Mine of Phandelver, Black Spider, and once Roland gained access to the Forge of Spells, well, then he started to implement Phase 2 of his plan. He further consolidated his power and declared independence from Neverwinter. I forgot to mention that in this homebrewed version of the Forgotten Realms, Phandalin was under the control of Neverwinter. They followed Neverwinter's laws, they paid taxes to Neverwinter, sent soldiers to Neverwinter. And once he had the Forge of Spells, Roland was not going to be under the thumb of Neverwinter anymore. Using his powers, he began to build up Phandalin into a thriving economy. I made great use of one of my favorite spells, Plant Growth. The spell essentially allows you to increase crop yields on the land that you cast Plant Growth on. Phandalin quickly became the largest producer of food anywhere on the Sword Coast thanks to near constant use of plant growth every day to supercharge the soil. Combine that with a growing mining industry and an enchanting economy that was growing in Phandalin, and things were on the up and up. Everything was perfect, but like all great villains do, Roland got in his own way. Because I think that's also important when you're playing a villainous character. You have to constantly play up that flaw, and be okay with not quote-unquote winning in the end. Because, and this is a hill that I and many other philosophers will die on, evil is not rational. You can't play a rational, diabolically evil character because it just doesn't make sense to be evil. No logical person would go and try to commit evil for evil's sake. So I began to play up Roland's biggest flaw, which is his paranoia. He was paranoid that Neverwinter was going to attack. And that led to his magnum opus of evil, the Burning of Neverwinter. Roland had been scouting this Neverwinter for a while, and in this homebrewed world of Neverwinter, the city was divided into 2 areas. The north, where the nobles lived, and the south, which the peasants lived. The two were separated by a river that cut through the center of Neverwinter. Roland got to thinking, of course Phandalin was going to be attacked soon. They were so profitable, they were doing so well. Neverwinter was going to take everything he had again. So he started spreading flammable material over the north side of the city. His goal was to kill all the nobles in one fell swoop. And once everything was set up, Roland went and got another party member, a paladin, and laid out his plan and his rationale. I think this is extremely important because if you're going to take an evil action that is going to radically change the course of the campaign, in and out of character, I think you need to have other party members involved. Not all of them, but at least one. Because, and I've said this many times before on the channel, D&D is a team game. You're not acting alone over the course of an adventure, and everyone else is trying to have their own fun. So if you're going to do something that is going to radically alter everything, checking in with other players in the moment and making sure that you're not going to step on anyone's toes is a really good idea. Make sure other players agree with your decision. Don't just do super evil things without at least one party member having a chance to say no. Always act with the party. And some of you might be saying, well, my party would never allow me to do anything evil then. Well, guess what? You're probably not in the right party to be playing an evil character then. Go figure. If everyone else at the table doesn't want you to do an evil action that your character would do, that's not the right character for the group you're in. Might be a controversial take, but I'm gonna stand by it. After you wrap up a session for the day, you still gotta be able to interact with the people around you. And if you start building up this animosity between players, well, your campaign's gonna suffer a lot. That being said, the paladin agreed with Roland's reasoning. For so long, he'd been such a staunch ally and a reasonable dude, so he gave the order, and Roland began to drop fireballs from the sky. Neverwinter burned. Thousands died. Fires spread across the river, and innocents died as well. For a few sessions after, the party dealt with the fallout and the refugee crisis. And in the middle of this, RDM dropped the bomb that Neverwinter was a vassal state to another empire across the sea. This was the beginning of the DM's new homebrew world that they were beginning to introduce to us. Eventually, through a series of unfortunate events, the party found out what Roland did, and he had to admit to all his crimes. Not just the burning of Neverwinter, but all the murders, the lies. It led to some of my favorite interplayer moments that I've ever been a part of. Since the party genuinely liked Roland, or at least appreciated him, the result of his evil actions hit that much harder. He wasn't a character that the party actively despised, and so the players at the table got to play out their real internal conflict of a character that was so helpful to them, but now obviously so evil. The rest of the campaign was spent in conflict with this evil warmongering empire that was actually trying to summon Tiamat and absorb her power. During this time, Roland still underwent character development, because with evil characters, after they do their big evil actions, you can have one of two options. One is you have them double down on their evilness and say, what I did was completely right. Or you can try and have them change and grow, progress. And Roland went through a little of both. For a while after the burning of Neverwinter, and when he was found out, he was remorseful. After, though, he became a pacifist, trying to handle problems without killing, with as little violence and bloodshed as possible. But that's when the conflict with the evil empire started heating up, and the party began murdering their enemies as ruthlessly as Roland had, and he became furious. All their talk of morals and ethics went right out the window when it was their enemies. Roland tried to change, but at the end of it he realized he was the force that the party needed all along. These evil actions needed to be done to keep safe good people. The morality the party had preached was just the lies they told themselves to keep society together and shelter them from the hard realities of life. So Roland returned to a position of leadership after that, feeling confident in himself. But he had changed from his experiences. Roland swore that he would not hurt innocents anymore and do everything that he could to shelter them, but anyone or anything that raised a weapon against him would be destroyed. Roland was an evil person at heart, but he worked within the interests of the party. He was a monster who could be pointed at things. While he wrestled with himself and could have become good, that wasn't in the cards for him. Roland, time and time again, risked his life for his fellow party members. Yes, he was evil, but all the evil things he did was for them, and not himself. All he wanted was the people he cared about to have a better life. At the end of the campaign, the party squared off against an ancient red dragon. After it was killed, the process of awakening Tiamat had begun. Someone needed to sacrifice themselves in order to stop the ritual, and Roland, like always, stepped up to the plate. His body was destroyed, and he died. Well, kinda. His body was destroyed, but he had a ring of mind shielding. When he died, his mind was kept safe in the ring, and using the ring as payment for his services, in secret, his goddess brought him back to life. This was a plan Roland had been working on in secret for a while, because he'd always assumed that he would just be assassinated at some point. Hell, there was an assassin rogue in the party that didn't like him that much. At the end of the campaign, Roland attended his own funeral where the party mourned him. Eventually, he revealed himself to be alive and was promptly stripped of any leadership position but allowed to walk free. He was evil, but helpful. An evil that benefited the party, which, in my opinion, is the way you make an evil character work in any system. Roland made it to 15th level by the end of the campaign, and he was chaotic evil. Despite what he told himself and others, his actions were chaotic, and they were evil. He was a liar, a psychopath, a mass murderer, and somehow a hero. In my opinion, the way you play an evil character in any TTRPG is to 1. Give them a value that they uphold, 2. Have them go to the extremes to obtain that value, and 3. 95% of the time, have them work to the benefit of the party. And that third point is the most important. Your evil character shouldn't be a drag on everyone else. Now, if you want more tips for making great characters, check out this video right here, and let me know in the comments below if you want more of these types of stories. And thank you for entering the dungeon.